Hi, welcome back to Care. If you're just joining us, it is all about dealing with your teenager, the early adolescent stage, and we're going to jump right back into it because I want to find out, one, what is that stage? Is there a defining stage? Is it 13 to 18? Is it just, like that specific stage? How do you define, that stage of development?
Well, in terms of using one word in a snapshot, adolescence is about change. I would use change and transition as our defining words. In terms of ages, it is broken up into 3 age brackets. So you have the pre-adolescent, which would be from your 11 to 13, and then you have middle adolescence, which would be from 13 to 16, and then you have the late adolescent stage, where a lot of the major issues have passed, and the teen is now preparing to transition into what you call early adulthood, young adulthood.
Okay.
That is characterized by different, challenges and things of that sort. The pre-adolescent period, you more have the transition with the cognitive development. Between that and middle, you have the hormones, the physical changes, increases in estrogen, testosterone, the normal physiological changes, the body is changing and stuff. Now, one of the things I want to highlight that I feel that we take for granted is the power of hormones.
Right.
A lot of the behaviors that we see, sometimes I want to use the word deviant or not so functional behaviors, sometimes they're influenced by these rises and falls in hormone levels. And I wanted to make that a point because we look at them and be like, I don't understand what's wrong with you. You're good 1 minute and then you're sad the next. Yep, those hormones. You're very angry. Hormones.
It's funny that you speak about the power of hormones, and I like that term, the power of hormones, because last week, it was all about postpartum depression and dealing with mental illness. It was not from a teenage point of view, but from, obviously, given what was in the news and whatnot, we felt it prudent to deal with it.
Yes.
And I shared my story in terms of now developing a hyperactive thyroid.
Yeah.
And before the diagnosis came mood swings, came this ultimate feeling of anxiety. And people around me would know that, I've been in a warehouse that's exploding and stand up cool and calm and handle my story. So here's this person who's having a panic attack for the first time in her life. And it's what is going on with you?
Yes.
Only because physical signs came that I would say that, thank God, because the physical signs were manifested so quickly that we were able to diagnose, oh wait, her hormones are completely out of whack. And so the hormones that are what's supposed to help her anxiety and keep her calm are just not there.
Yeah.
So I like that term, the power of hormones. So tell me, what is your experience with depression and mental illness with teens? We've certainly discussed it, I think, last week in terms of mothers. But it's a good time that, I think the country's a little bit receptive to wait. Maybe this is a real thing. We have this taboo and stigma around a lot of mental illness in our country. Speak to mental illness in teens for me for a bit.
What I would like to say and like to normalize is that mental illness is a continuum, right? That starts from mild to severe. So everybody at some point in time experiences different symptoms that come to be officially labeled as a mental illness when it is in the severe category. I'm sure we can all say we have experienced sadness, or we have all experienced a day when we felt depressed or we felt down. When we talk about somebody getting an official diagnosis of the child is depressed or the child is suicidal, it means at this point in time, your coping mechanisms, they're not working for you, and you're persistently and consistently showing these signs of not functioning well. Now with kids, with the hormones, with the challenges, there are lots of things happening in the social environment. I want to make friends, I don't know how to make friends, my body is changing, I feel awkward, I feel uncomfortable. If it's not managed well, you can have the symptoms of depression, and it's very common. The reason why we have to take it seriously is that some kids, because they don't share and they don't talk and they keep it on the inside, it can lead to suicide. It can lead to self-harm. We have a lot of cutting, right? We have a lot of not very healthy behaviors like substance abuse that happens that have to do with not managing your feelings well. So in my experience, I've had to do a number of crisis interventions with young people struggling so badly with their emotions, wanting to take their life, having to attempt suicide previously, needing to put things in place where they're rushed to the hospital. I like to encourage parents to pay attention to their moods. We know in the adolescent period you will have the up and down. Leave me alone, but we're more looking at the ones that are extreme. You're isolating yourself, your grades falling, you're being very secretive. Anything that is really on the extreme end, that is consistent for over like a 2-week period, we know that we're dealing with something that maybe potentially could be diagnosed as a mental illness. So I encourage parents to pay attention because I call them the first line responders. They're the ones who would observe and know what's happening. So I can't stress that more. We need to take it very seriously because remember, they don't know how to cope with what's happening on their own and they need help. And sometimes we need to offer them the help when they act reserved or they don't seem to want us in their space.
Is there a way that we can prevent it getting to an extreme? How can I, as a mother, recognize that your hormones are acting up? Is acting up even an appropriate way to say it to them? You know, how can I show empathy to a child that is going through that hormonal phase? You know, how can I maybe even prepare her to suggest to her that, or is that even right? You know, should we have a conversation that says, okay, hey, you know, you're gonna go through this. Your hormones are gonna be experiencing highs and lows, etc. And maybe these are some of the things that you could look out for. And if you find that, you know, you're going through this, I'm here to talk to you. Would you suggest that that is a conversation that we can have? Preparing them to be ready for what am I feeling, you know? Because I remember that was something that my doctor did. My doctor said, because your thyroid is where it is, this is going to happen. Yeah. And because I was prepared for it, when I felt my heart palpitating, when I felt this, I felt that, I knew what it was and I could get myself, you know, I could fight it through or whatnot, you know, because I was prepared for it. Is there merit in preparing them for the hormone changes? What should we expect, etc.?
I think there's always merit in having conversation. You could never go wrong with talking to somebody about what you're about to go through. When I have knowledge, it removes anxiety. It helps me to feel as if I have a sense of control. And that is something you can offer children. You can, at the end of maybe the SCA period, talk to them. You know, you might notice certain things happening in your body, and this goes as well with the sexual changes as well. This is what this means. Let's talk about it. Let's get the information out on the table. I think those conversations are important. But in terms of, you know, the extremes of behavior where the child may actually have a mental illness, I would more do the seeking medical support.
Right. Because there's sometimes it can't be prevented. If
sometimes it's genetic.
Okay.
But also, you don't want to become the enemy. As in, mommy, you telling me I have a mental illness? You know, so somebody who's clinically depressed or who's down, they're not really interested in much conversation.
I mean, I guess I was trying to figure out if it can be prevented on the whole, you know, but I mean, you know, you're raising the point about the genetics and whatnot, where sometimes with the best of parenting and with the best of preparation, it may go down that road. Is that what you're suggesting?
It is possible because of the genetic aspect, and then also to remember you can't manage the social world. A lot of times feelings of sadness and being down is because I'm not able to adjust to my social environment. What you can do is provide as much support as possible. So for me, being direct about teaching children how to enter conversations, how to be assertive but not rude, how to choose your friends wisely, doing things to build their self-esteem and self-confidence, like getting them involved with extracurricular sports, things that make them feel good about themselves. Because the challenge is always with self-esteem. How do I feel about myself? When I feel armored and protected, I can go in my peer group and I can shine. I don't have to look for an example to follow. So that is one of the best ways to empower your kids moving into that phase, that you give them what they need before. It's almost like a battlefield, you know, you're going out into the world and you have so many changes that it makes you feel insecure.
You're giving me goosebumps. Because I remember, I mean, I wrote a children's book, and
Yeah.
in the preparation of this children's book, I did a lot of interviews, and I remember John Rahal saying to me that before you give a child anything in this world, you give them confidence.
Yeah.
Because a confident child really knows where they stand, they know their foothold. They're not going out there to look for validation in anybody else.
That's right. You prepare them. I don't want to use the word battle, but it is somewhat of a battle when we look at what is happening in the teens in our country. They're faced with a lot of negative influences that can really derail them from the high hopes that we have for them as adults and leaders and parents. So really and truly, you can say as much as you can, but it's only when I internalize what you give me, I can use it well. So that is what you do. The preventative approach you're saying is the conversation, is the exposure. You don't have to do everything yourself, as in the parent, like I have to figure out how to empower you. Who are the people in my environment that I can partner with? You know, the village raising the child.
Oh my gosh, you're speaking my language. I wrote a blog on that. I swear, I published a blog on that just this weekend because I was helping my daughter through something, and she watched me like, Mom, you're supposed to say that. You're supposed to comfort me. And I had to call on somebody else that she respects to say the exact same thing I just said.
Like, didn't I just say that?
But, you know, so the name was actually like, egos have nothing to do with parents, and like, you gotta take your ego out. Because as much as I wanted to point out, I just tell you that. And Mommy knows nothing.
But that would be your biggest success story. That is what I love. Networking is power.
Right.
Right? If you can't do it or they don't trust you, not that you don't say it, you know, because at the end of the day, all people, I wouldn't even just say children, everybody wants to know that their parents are in their corner.
Right.
Point blank period. So even though you say it the first time and it seems as it goes over the head, it's almost as if when you bring in a second person, it's like solidifying.
Yes.
You mightn't get the credit in the early.
That's all right.
You get the credit by university level when you know that maturity kicking. It's like, my mom is awesome. But for now, you get supports in the community. The point I wanted to raise with respect to the specific mental health diagnosis is that I would like the parents to be able to function as a support. So even though you may know that something may not be right with the child's mood, get the doctor to be the one that has the conversation, that shares that with the child, so that you are neutral.
Okay.
You know, so that you are not seen or you have to have all this transference onto you, all this negative energy going on to you.
Right.
You are a resource. Like, yes, we went to the doctor. You know, the doctor is saying this. This is what we're going to do at home to help you. You know, make yourself more the support person as opposed to the person saying, I read and I think you have, pressure. I think, you know, like you're being negative. So
okay. There's something, oh my gosh, it just left me.
it's gonna come back. I believe it.
Because we were talking about, oh, well, you see, look, thank God. God knew that it left me because we're going on break. I'm being told it's time to go on break. So when you come back, we're going to find out what was in my brain that left my brain. We're talking all about dealing with teens, how to manage that early adolescent stage. We specifically just spoke about mental illness and teens. Don't go anywhere. Today on Care is very exciting.
Knock a ting, everybody knock a ting. Hey! Knock a ting, everybody better clear the way when the general come, when the general come, when the general come. Whoa. Tell everybody we want it, bad like a job on a Juve morning. Clear the way when the general come, when the general come, when the general come. Boy. Tell everybody we want him, bad we bad, hey, bad we bad. Side step, anytime you step out it. Black outfit, springing like Jeff Howdy. When we wake, nothing can be powder. Because we bad from
Trinidad and Tobago. It's time to go green.
You okay to drive, babe? You're looking tired.
Yes, babe, I could drive. Let's go.
So, Jennifer said she was going to do it, but I ended up doing it. And because I ended up doing it, there was a big confusion. We had to organize it with Rishma, Nikki, Ram, and Christine. So I don't know what she
If you are too tired to drive, don't.
Hi, welcome to Care. If you're just joining us, today is all about dealing with your teen. For me, it's a scary phase. You know, I don't think that we can ever be prepared enough for dealing with a teen. The good thing is that apparently it's not our fault. If you have a deviant teen, it does not mean that you failed in parenting. And I know as a parent, I mean, and I see it on a lot of different social mom sites and whatnot. There's a lot of guilt. As a parent, you feel a lot of guilt because where did I go wrong? What am I doing wrong? Why is my child just like completely gone off? She's rude. I have no control over her. And so to hear today that a lot of it is just hormones. They're changing. They're learning. It's a selfish phase, not because they want to be selfish, but they're doing their own self-introspection, trying to figure themselves out. And we're at the stage where we're specifically dealing with mental health and teens. You know, obviously, yes, we want to support them, but you know, Asha raised a good point in terms of we don't want to be the parent saying, hey, you know, I think you're depressed. And so it is crucial to maybe involve a doctor and have that doctor and that therapist be the one to say, you know, you may need some serious help.
Yes.
That brings me to the point of affordability. Because I've seen it. I've seen it on mom groups where the moms have reached their limit. And I have often suggested maybe you need therapy.
Yeah.
And I've gotten back, I can't afford that. I mean, first to begin, I mean, I know that sometimes you think you can't afford something and you haven't even gone out there to price it. What is available to the average earner, income earner, to suggest, okay, I want to take this thing further. I don't want to self-diagnose, you know, I want to do it the right way.
Yeah.
What do I have? What do I have available to me?
Well, there is services available through the government,
Okay.
right? We have the child guidance units, right? That offers the testing, the assessment, the diagnosis to every parent in the country, right?
Okay.
We have our student support services, right? That place guidance and social workers in the school setting that allows for the identification of these mental health issues. But what I would like to suggest, you cannot play with something as serious as mental illness, right? You really cannot play with it. So there is sometimes need to pay for the psychiatrist, to pay for the specialist in identifying the particular problem. I believe that people in the helping professional wouldn't be too selfish and they could work with the particular clients. There are lots of affordable services out there. I wanted to put on the table as well things like small groups, small mom groups, right, as coping mechanisms for moms, even as ways of supporting each other, maybe even as ways of raising money to help each other. When you're in a tight-knit group and we all realize that our kids are dealing with depression, those are possible solutions to try and get the money to access the services. Outside of the public services which are available, you would have to do research. I always tell people when I do counseling, involve your faith. If it is you're a faith-based person, you can go to your pastor, your priest, your imam, and you bring up these issues to them and see what they have available to provide support. You have to use whatever is available to you in your community space to figure out how can I help my child. Because sometimes the psychiatrist might not be a continual process. It might just to be able to say this child does have a particular problem and it can be handled in the community.
Right.
There are community centers all over that deal with mental health.
But do these things actually work? I mean, or do they just exist in theory?
They work. I know sometimes there may be a waiting list, and that's realistic when you're accessing a free public service. The reality is you have to do whatever you can do on the urgency of your situation.
Okay, tell me, let's talk some figures then. I have a child who I think, you know, definitely needs some counseling. What is the average price that I should be budgeting if I am saying, okay, I really need to look into taking my daughter to a psychologist? You know?
It varies. I know of some private institutions that charge $400 a session, right? And it can go less and it can go more. It really all depends on the particular practitioner themselves, right?
But there must be something that I can think, because then, okay, if it is that I'm not a high income earner, then I can know to myself, okay, this may actually be someone who's on the higher end of the spectrum. I may be wanting to look for someone who's good, but on the lower end of the spectrum. So what would you suggest that I should be thinking as a figure?
I find it hard to lock you in because I don't want to give the wrong impression. But I would say just because you can go to the medical doctor and that can be your first line of identifying any issue with your child, I would say let's start with $200 because I think
right. So you could just go to a family doctor.
Right. I usually recommend that because as a therapist, as a counselor, I cannot look at you and know what's going on with you on the inside. You have to go to the doctor. Because I may assume or presuppose that this is what it looks like based on my training, but you have to go to the doctor to rule out what certain things are.
But won't the doctor say that you need to be referred maybe by, won't the doctor say, well, did you go to a therapist? Did the therapist suggest maybe she has a mental illness or something and that's why you're coming to me?
No.
Which is the first step.
I hope the doctor doesn't say that. Because you will send the client, you would send the mom with a letter. And in that referral letter would have all the particular behaviors, all the particular signs, because remember you're going to be speaking to the parent, you're going to be speaking to the child. If you're efficient and you're thorough in what you do, you will go into the school environment and you would find out what's going on at school, and you would have all these observations that show that the child. So
that's why I think they should come to the therapist first, so the therapist could do all of that.
Remember, in school you have the guidance and the social workers, and you may also have teachers.
But do we have enough guidance and social workers in schools?
I don't know if I can speak to the numbers. I know we have more problems that we may have helping professionals, right? So there will always be that imbalance. But I know the people who are working there, they're working hard towards helping.
I'm not suggesting they are not working hard. But you're right. I think that the imbalance is there. So, you know, I'm this mother. I want help. And, you know, first to begin, if I'm a preventative mother, it means that my child is not ready to commit suicide. My child is not actually doing cutting or anything like that. And so I'm no longer priority. Because when you are ill-resourced, the first thing that happens is that we have to take the critical cases first, which means that I'm only going to get help when my child starts cutting themselves and it starts to be a real situation. And that is my fear. That is my fear because I don't think that we are well-resourced. So if I go down this public road, then it's like, well, the child isn't cutting themselves. Like, the child might just be depressed. Like, give it some time. Let's see. I don't want to reach to that stage. I want to reach because you're saying to be aware, be empathetic, have the conversations. From the time you start to see them withdrawing and whatnot, let's start to deal with it. And the truth is, and if we're being honest, and I like to be honest on this show, if we're being honest, those lesser stages are not looked at because we are not well-resourced. And so that's for me why I'm asking, as a mother, if I want to start early, if I want to get her to, you know, to do therapy and whatnot, to make sure that this is not going down the road of, or if it is a serious mental illness, that I catch it very early on. You know, what should I do? Do I go to a therapist first to say, look, I do have concerns and I want to catch it very early on, so that you can then do all your different steps and say, okay, I do think it's time for a doctor.
Okay, I think in trying to be preventive, that's excellent. And I think if it is, you observe things that may be a source of concern, maybe seeking a consultation first off with somebody in the professional field is good. I would still recommend your doctor because they would know about these types of things and they may be able to put you onto somebody who suits your particular budget, right? I also feel like guidance officers, they take a very preventative approach in the school environment. So they're going to deal with the emotional issues. So they are also frontline people in the schools, your teachers and stuff like that. They are able to, you know, note, well, she was happy in Form 1 and notice her mood is kind of changing. They are the ones to really help you know what is happening there and can cue you in to know how serious you have to go in getting follow-up support. Because I don't want that parents become jittery over every behavior that does not look normal.
Agreed.
You know, because this adolescent period, you're going to experience a lot of different things because you are in transition and you are in.
So how do we know? How do we know what's normal versus what's not normal? How do we know? I mean, because you're right. Because it's such a funny thing because we don't want to be worried for every little thing, but at the same time, we don't want to end up being so lackadaisical or so not worried, so calm that we bypass something that was serious. So tell me, is there a list? Is there something that I can say, okay, this is normal, this is not. This is okay, this is not. Should my child be dealing with serious heartbreak at 16 or not? You know, I mean, how do I know?
Okay, so remember when at one point we were saying it's a continuum, right?
It is.
Most times when we say a child is in difficulty, is in distress, is when functioning on a day-to-day basis has deteriorated. So the child is not performing academically. What you first knew your child to be at a point in time, it no longer exists. You can track the behaviors. The behaviors will be noticeably clear when it's dysfunctional, right? Now, I can't not tell you to talk to people because the very gist of this show is education. So even this is another step in the process of learning where can I go to access resources. The best people you can talk to are those are the ones who are going to give the diagnosis. Because what we're talking about here is somewhat, I want to say theoretical, because you're looking at a range of behaviors that can mean different things. You just said you're dealing with heartbreak. Sometimes the symptoms of heartbreak could look like you're having a depressive episode. You're sad, you don't want to do anything, you're not eating, you're losing weight, but it doesn't mean I'm going to diagnose you as clinically depressed. I know you have a trigger. So it's a very sensitive thing in diagnosing mental illness. What I would say to empower parents is that your observation is important, right? You notice certain changes, a conversation starting at home just to assess how deep-rooted are these behaviors that I'm seeing in my child? Do I need to take a further step? If after talking to you, I don't feel at peace that, you know, you're just going through something and I could provide the support, because sometimes children are dealing with conflicts with friends and they don't want to talk about it, but when you talk to them, you give them some advice and they're happy and chirpy the next day.
Right.
Right? So you know just by the continual conversation, what are the levels you need to engage. I think ultimately, if it is you feel as though this behavior has gone on for a month, 2 months, you know you're dealing with something serious and you have to access the services of a psychiatrist and a psychologist. If it means that you can't do no better and you cannot afford, the sooner you seek out the services, the better it is for you.
Right, affordability-wise even.
Even.
Because you're looking at just a consultation versus something major.
Exactly. Going to the hospital, utilizing nurses. You know, these are people who would be dealing with how moods and emotions change.
But then,
and vary.
how is my child going to react to me seeking out all of this help? Wouldn't she think, oh God, well, she does think I'm depressed. Should I then be doing it kind of on the low?
I don't think anything is wrong with doing it. You know, because you have a private life too as a mom.
Yeah.
You know, you want to do research, you can do it on the low. So what I would say, do your research, and when the time is right, because you're going to be continually communicating with your child, you introduce it slowly.
Right.
You know?
And they say, I guess that's why it is so important to have that continuous conversation. So it's not like one day all of a sudden she just decides she's so up in depressiveness and like mental illness and all kind of thing. Like, why are you all of a sudden
and why are you coming at me with all of this, Mom?
Gotcha. We're going to pay some bills. When we come back, it's all about dealing with your teen, that difficult time for every mother and father and grandparents and anybody in childcare. Don't go anywhere. You're looking at care, and we're going to be right back.
Log on to couponstt.com. It's the place to find coupons, deals, and the best prices on products and services nationwide. Life just got better with couponstt.com.
Do you want to create an amazing experience for your business? Increase your sales with specific content and real-time information? Well, come engage with Click Media, your #1 choice for digital signage solutions. You can even create content in real time with a powerful and centralized system or outdoor LED billboards or digital menu boards to engage customers in line, and tablet displays positioned at the point of purchase, and so much more. Give us a call today at 663-0604, your digital signage specialists.
Okay, if you're just joining us, today is all about dealing with your teen. It is a tough time. They are going through a lot. Their hormones are raging, and we have learned about the power of hormones. I like that because it really helps us to empathize with them. They're not just being selfish. They're not just being brats. The hormones are real, and they are really going through something that they themselves are not really in control of.
That's right.
We spoke about something during the break, and it was very important to me because, you know, that comes up a lot. I certainly, I remember it coming up with child abuse.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about 1 in 3 women are abused, and those women, not having dealt with it, can't actually raise the conversation and have conversations and have healthy conversations with their own children because of what they'd gone through. And you started to speak about with me during the break that, you know, parental self-care is so important because sometimes your child may be going through something and it takes you back to pain and a time when, you know, it was not pleasant for you. And if you didn't deal with it, then it's very difficult to help your own child. Speak to that a little bit.
Well, what I've found in my experience, and it seems to be a characteristic of human nature, we could forget. We could forget some of the difficulties we had during a developmental period. So as your child begins to go through the storm and the stress of the adolescent period, you may begin to start to feel certain pangs, certain pains that you dealt with when you were a teen. And if you never really employed healthy coping mechanisms, you may find yourself struggling just as much as the teenager. And just having that self-awareness speaks to, sometimes parents need to deal with their own issues while they try to provide support for their own children. If they had a very traumatic teenage period, it comes back up. It's almost as if you're dealing with a grief, right? You may have lost somebody, moved past it, and then somebody dies again, and you find not just the new death affecting you, but something from the past. You know, sometimes parents grieve because they never enjoyed the adolescent period. Sometimes it's hard for them. Sometimes they compete with their kids. You know, sometimes there's jealousy because I've worked hard, even though I've worked hard to give you better. Sometimes it's hard for me to see it because it's not really me living the experience. So what I encourage for parents is you have to be in check with your own emotions. When I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling hurt, or I'm feeling tired, what is the source of it? Is it that I'm not adjusting well to the situation? Is it that I'm overworked and stressed out? Self-awareness is empowering. Once you know what is your problem or what is causing you to feel a certain way, then you know what I can choose as my options to help. Sometimes it may mean I need a Tobago trip. Sometimes it may mean go and stay by your grandparents or your godparents for a weekend. Sometimes it may mean a date night. You need to be able to work self-care into your own life so that you are better for them. I always tell my parents, remember what they tell you in an airplane.
The proverbial oxygen mask.
It's true. You can't help anybody if you're dying. Yeah. You can't. And that's, even in my profession, self-care is priority. I cannot help you if I'm a mess. You're talking to me and I'm crying. So sometimes, that's right, it's like, what's wrong with you? The person needing the help becomes the helper. And a lot of times, adolescents have to help their parents through their own developmental challenges because they just can't cope with it. So it's not a criticism. Nobody's perfect in life. As we go through, as I call life, you have to learn to adapt and adjust. And the successful ones are the ones who adapt quickly and adjust quickly. I'm not coping well, what do I need to do to cope better? Do I need education? Do I just need to take a break? Maybe I'm tired. When you're tired, you do some crazy things.
Oh, tell me about it.
You do some crazy things, tiredness, sleepiness. That's a serious condition. So for me, I want to encourage the self-awareness and the self-care. It is critical. It's very important. And taking time, maybe exercising, you know, whatever you do that makes you happy. Travel. There are different things that work for different people. It would have to be very personalized, but that's what I'm encouraging for parents.
You said just now, sorry, I'm taking notes so that I don't lose what the thoughts I had in my head like I did earlier. Yeah. You said just now about sometimes, you know, the helper becomes the helpee. And, you know, a mother or a father who are not in that space can't even help their children, you know, and sometimes the teenager has to end up dealing with them and being the one helping the parent through. But we're all human. So, I mean, what if I've lost my job or I am going through something? Do we cry quietly and put on a strong front to our children? Or do we show them that life is hard and that I am going through things and that I am human and not necessarily depend on them for support? But we're a family and we're a team. What would you suggest? Do we hide it? Do we always put on a strong front that we are there for them and this is our role? Or do we show our vulnerability and help them sometimes come and say, Mom, it's gonna be okay, you know, I'm here for you, we're a team?
I would like to say appropriate is a very important word. I think a child would always want to support his or her parents. That's natural. I love you. I don't want to see you sad or unhappy. But what we must always remember is perspective. As an adult, you have the ability to look back. You have that mental development. You have experience. You have been out in the world. Children and teens tend to have a different way of thinking about the world. So when we necessarily go too far, we leave them in a vacuum. When they now try to problem solve and they take on themselves things that they shouldn't really do. So I'm thinking there should be conversations that happen with adults where you are able to be candid, you're able to be open. If you have to do the ugly cry, you do the ugly cry. And then you pull yourself together and you say, what do we want to share with them that's appropriate? Because the child may be going through CXC, the child may be going through that transition into Form 3, where I have found it to be a really heightened time of all the crazy behaviors, right? So you don't want to put something on this child that makes them feel unstable. Because remember, children look to their parents as their source of stability. When you show me there's a crack in the foundation, it messes with my concept of the world. It's almost as if like, well, if mommy don't have money, then what's going to happen? And they go into realms of problem solving that they developmentally they really can't do. So it makes it stressful. So I think, once again, the support system that parents have in place, you need to have people that you talk to. People that give you help, that give you support. Doesn't necessarily have to be a professional in the community. It can be a sister, it can be a brother. Somebody who you can trust that will give you the right advice, who can help you plan in stages, maybe how to get over the particular problem, right? And then you talk to other parents. How would you think this would sound? You know, you bounce ideas off of people because you don't want to, in trying to keep the family together, share the wrong type of information with your children that does not really help them. Sometimes it's best to share the information with a plan already in place. So right now, mommy and daddy or mommy may not be making as much money, but this is how we're going to work around it. For a little while, instead of Cheerios, you have to eat cornflakes, right? Instead of 192 channels, we're only going to have this amount of channels. You may not enjoy it, but this is what we need to do for a period of time. I don't need to tell you that I'm not working and, you know, all these other more mature aspects of the situation, but you come with a plan. Because really and truly, it's not the problem, you know, it's the feeling of if, okay,
of the security.
There's a solution to it.
You actually answered the question that I wrote down just now because it's a balance between, you know, I mean, if you're tired, if you're stressed out, you don't want the child to ever think that, you know, because we're human. Yeah. And so we may come and we're quiet and we are bothered, you know, we're short, and the child may think, well, maybe it's my fault. Yeah. So there must be some level of communication to suggest that, you know, well, we're not earning as much income or whatever it is. Yeah. So I guess having a plan so that, yes, you come and say, well, you know, mom might be a little tired these days or whatnot, you know.
And also, too, in the period where there's no issues, you must set people up for those moments when you know you wouldn't be functional. And I'm talking about maybe more so everyday, day-to-day situations. There are times when you know when you come home from work, you need 5 minutes just for a break. So to prepare kids for those, you know you're going to be tired. Prevention is so important. You just say, here, what? When I'm behaving this way, I want you to know, and this is not when you're in the mood, but when you're calm and you're having a good time, I want you to know when you see this is what it means. So that, once again, I have information to work with. So I know, all right, mommy in a mood, I didn't do anything. Yeah. When she's good.
Or set boundaries. You know, I coach. When I am finished coaching 33-year-olds, it is not the time for us to have a conversation. mommy is physically drained. And so we know after mommy coaches, that is what I call your alone time. Because I think children need alone time.
Of course, we all need alone time.
You need to be, and it doesn't mean iPad time. It means use your
Quiet time,
creativity,
do something.
be quiet, and entertain yourself in your safe space.
Yeah.
That is not mommy and me time. So she knows coaching after the show, because I've just finished speaking for an hour, and I don't want to talk anymore for a few minutes. So, you know, we have set times that this means mom's not available to me right now.
And that is what makes your family dynamic. It's unique. That's how you choose to set up your household, and it's not about functional, dysfunctional. This is how we work. So when she knows that, she knows what certain behaviors mean. So I think that's important. Talking.
It's all about communication.
Communication.
All about
so
constant
powerful in
communication.
families. You have to talk. You have to be honest, right? You may have to learn how to speak to kids and teens because they are not adults and they won't understand it the same way. One of the things I wanted to say, kids always try to fix stuff. Even toddlers, when they see parents not, there's a mood or tension, you might see them touch the parents' hand together. They're always trying to make it better.
Right.
And that is what leads to dysfunction, is when they don't have enough information to know, or sometimes they feel bad when they feel they tried to fix it and it didn't work. So then I'm bad, something is wrong with me. So by communicating, they pacify a lot of that.
Well, thank you so much. I feel a little bit more prepared for dealing with teens. Guys, it's been great. We have maybe about 30 seconds left. You want to give, can we give your telephone number out on air for if someone needs a bit of,
call,
right? Yes. So if you need some support, if you're out there and you're pulling your hair out, call Asha. Asha, what's your number?
320-1745 or 349-1055. You can also send me an email at cfpcs.tt@gmail.com. So I'm going to say that again, cfpcs.tt@gmail.com.
We're going to put the information on our website, on our Facebook page. You can look for us on Instagram, on all social media, Care Parenting, MarshaRiley.com. All the resources are going to be there. Guys, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope this segment has helped you a little bit in dealing with your teen. You've been watching Care. See you next week. Yeah? Good?